So Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni settled their whole mess, and literally within 48 hours, Blake's lawyers were back in court asking for more money. That's not me being dramatic. That's the actual timeline. The settlement got announced May 5th. May 7th, she filed a new motion. And the thing she's asking for now, it's not pocket change. We're talking attorney's fees, treble damages, punitive damages, potentially tens of millions of dollars on top of a case that supposedly everyone agreed was done. So the question isn't whether this case is over. The question is why Blake Lively is still in court trying to get paid after she already settled for zero. And that zero part matters. Because when the settlement hit, both sides put out this very polished joint statement calling the film a source of pride and saying Blake's concerns deserve to be heard. Very diplomatic, very, we're all friends now. But here's what they didn't say. Blake Lively got $0, not a settlement payout, not a confidential sum, not an undisclosed amount that everyone whispers about at parties. Zero. And Brian Friedman, who's Baldoni's attorney, couldn't help himself. He came out and said Blake filed a $300 million claim and ended up with nothing. And then he asked the genuinely devastating question. If this is a resounding victory, what does her defeat look like? And look, I know defense attorneys are supposed to spin, but that's not spin. That's math. 300 million ask, zero settlement. The math is not complicated. So how did we get here? Because the whole thing was supposed to go to trial less than 2 weeks after they settled. May 2026, jury selection looming, everybody lawyered up to their eyeballs, and then suddenly done. Confidential settlement, everyone go home. And for about 48 hours, that seemed like the end. Blake's team put out their statement, Baldoni's team put out theirs, and the internet did what the internet does. But then May 7th rolls around, and Blake's attorneys dropped this new motion, arguing that Baldoni's $400 million defamation suit against her was a retaliatory abuse of the legal system designed to silence and intimidate her. And that's the key phrase right there, retaliatory abuse of the legal system. Because the law she's using is actually an important one. It's designed to protect sexual harassment victims from getting sued into oblivion just for speaking up. The idea is you should be able to make your allegations without fearing that the person you're accusing is going to turn around and bury you in defamation claims. That's a real protection, and it matters. But here's the catch. It only works if what you said was true. And this is where Blake Lively's situation gets genuinely complicated. Because to win this new claim, she has to prove that her original allegations were truthful, not exaggerated, and not made with reckless disregard for the truth. And there's evidence in the record that makes that really difficult. Like not ambiguous evidence, specific documented contradictions. Colleen Hoover, the author of the book, gave deposition testimony that directly contradicts things Blake said. Blake claimed she never told Colleen to unfollow Justin Baldoni on social media. Colleen said under oath that Blake did ask her to unfollow him. That's not a misunderstanding. That's one person saying something happened and the other person saying it didn't. And one of them is the author of the source material who has no obvious reason to lie about a social media follow. There's also the claim about Sony and the dailies. Blake allegedly said she didn't tell Sony to destroy footage, and that got contradicted too. And then there's the Taylor Swift text messages that got deleted. I'm not even going to pretend I understand the full context of that one, but when you're in litigation and messages get deleted, judges notice. They really notice. So now Blake Lively is trying to use a statute that protects truthful accusers, but the factual record has multiple instances where her version of events doesn't match what other witnesses said under oath. And Brian Friedman's argument, which again is Baldoni's attorney, so take it with whatever salt you want, is that Blake settled because she was afraid to take the witness stand. His exact words, she did not want to face cross-examination by anyone because that would require her to actually tell the truth. That's a harsh thing to say about someone. But when you look at the settlement timing, less than 2 weeks before trial, after depositions had already happened, after those contradictions were already on the record, it's not unreasonable to think she didn't want to spend days being cross-examined about every inconsistency. And let's talk about the money part, because the money part is honestly the strangest part of all of this. The claim she's making now is for attorney fees and damages that resulted specifically from Baldoni's defamation suit against her. But here's the timeline problem. That defamation suit only existed for about a month before it got wrapped into the broader settlement. So even if she wins, which is a huge if, we're talking about 1 month of legal fees, maybe. And these are expensive lawyers, sure. But 1 month of even the most expensive lawyers in the world is not tens of millions of dollars. The estimate from people who actually practice this kind of law is maybe $50,000 tops. For context, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have a combined net worth that makes $50,000 look like what they spend on Met Gala after parties. It's a rounding error. It's a couple of lines on a balance sheet. And yet, here we are with motions and filings and legal teams burning billable hours over an amount that to them is essentially pocket change. Which brings us to the Met Gala, because of course Blake Lively went to the Met Gala. She missed it last year during all the legal chaos. And this year she showed up looking stunning, head held high, doing exactly what she would have done before any of this happened. And from a PR perspective, that's the right move. If you're Blake Lively, you don't hide. You put on the designer dress, you walk the carpet, you act like everything is fine. Because acting like everything is fine is what celebrities do. That's the job. But it's also interesting timing because she's at the Met Gala projecting victory while her legal team is simultaneously filing motions, arguing that she was so damaged by Baldoni's actions that she deserves millions in additional compensation. The two images don't match. Either you're so traumatized by the retaliatory legal abuse that you need tens of millions to be made whole, or you're healed enough to serve looks at the biggest fashion event of the year. You can't really do both at the same time without people noticing the contradiction. And the other thing that keeps getting lost in all the legal gymnastics is who brought this to the public first. Blake Lively filed her initial complaint. She's the one who put the allegations into the public record. Baldoni's defamation suit was a response to that. So now she's arguing that his response was retaliatory and designed to silence her, but she's the one who opened the door. It's hard to argue someone silenced you when you're the one who started talking. And it's even harder when you then settled the case for $0, which means neither side admitted anything, and then you immediately went back to court asking for more money. At some point, it stops looking like a search for justice and starts looking like you just can't stand the idea of someone else getting the last word. And that's what I think is actually driving this. Not money, not legal principle, not even reputation at this point. It's the last word. Blake Lively cannot let Justin Baldoni walk away from this without her getting to say she won. But she settled for $0. She can't refile the same claims. The settlement explicitly bars that. So her only option is this narrow procedural argument about attorney fees on a defamation claim that barely existed. It's the legal equivalent of flipping the board after you've already agreed to call it a draw. And the judge is probably going to look at this and do exactly what judges do when wealthy people use the court system to keep fighting personal battles. Thank both parties for their time, take it under advisement, and then issue an order a week later telling everyone to go home and pay their own bills. Because here's the reality that gets buried by all the high-priced lawyering. The court system has an actual backlog. There are people with real cases, injury cases, housing cases, custody cases, waiting months or years for their day in court. And meanwhile, these two insanely wealthy Hollywood figures are occupying 3 different areas of law, fighting over something that at its core is a workplace dispute that both sides already agreed to settle. They're burning judicial resources on what amounts to a disagreement between people who will never have to worry about money again. And the lawyers are doing legal gymnastics because that's what high-priced lawyers do. They find angles, they file motions, they keep the meter running. But at the end of it, nothing is going to happen. The case got dismissed, the settlement was $0. The remaining claim is for a month of attorney's fees that even in the best-case scenario is a fraction of what's already been spent. And the thing about both sides claiming victory is that both sides can't win. That's not how it works. In sports, there's a winner and a loser. In litigation, someone walks away with money or an injunction or an apology or something tangible. Here, Blake got nothing. Baldoni got nothing except the ability to say she got nothing. And now they're both spinning like they won. And the only people actually winning are the lawyers who've been billing this entire time. Brian Friedman gets to give great quotes to the press. Blake's team gets to file creative motions. Everyone gets to feel significant. And the rest of us are watching 2 people with more money than most of us will ever see fight over who gets to say they were right about a movie that came out years ago. The judge is probably going to see it the same way. Both sides will be told to walk away, pay their own legal fees, and stop wasting the court's time. And honestly, that's the right outcome. Because if you settle for $0 and then immediately ask for millions, you're not really done fighting. You're just fighting in a different lane. And if you're Blake Lively, at some point, you have to ask yourself whether the last word is worth looking, like you can't let go of a case you already agreed to end. She showed up at the Met Gala looking like she'd moved on, but the court filings tell a different story. And until she actually stops filing motions, this thing isn't over, no matter what the settlement papers say. Before we wrap up, if you're enjoying this kind of breakdown, hit subscribe on our channel pretty loud so you don't miss the next one. So, we'll see what the judge does. But if history is any guide, the order is already written. Everyone goes home, everyone pays their own bills. And the only real winners are the lawyers who got to bill for every single minute of it.